Well, it's the playoffs. The Chiefs are still in it, which means we are fortunate enough to be joined by Rany Jazayerli of The Ringer 4A, and I count 10 times on the show with us. So, Rany, happy 10 episode anniversary with us. How are you doing? And do you have any stuff for us to start hyping for you yet?
So 10 times I've been on the show. That's remarkable when you consider that almost every time I'm on, it's because the Chiefs are about to play a playoff game
Yeah.
or just played a playoff game. If you had this podcast starting in like 1972 and it ended in like 2000 and
17.
2017, we wouldn't have done that many more. So
Right. Yeah.
Mhm.
so yes, it's a tradition now. It's a tradition. I have to do this, and I enjoy it. It's a tradition for me to go skiing in the heart of Broncos country in Vail, middle of January. And it's become a tradition apparently to watch the Chiefs beat the Buffalo Bills
Mm.
in a very stressful playoff game while I'm there because I watched all three of them from the same place with the same friends, good friends, the kind of friends who will offer you condolences when Josh Allen scores the go-ahead touchdown with 13 seconds left. Good times were
Sure.
had by all. But this time not quite as stressful, but a lot more stressful than it probably should have been.
Yeah, certainly. We'll get into that. I wanted to start with something that I saw that somebody famous bit from one of your tweets. Just want to see what you think about the Mahomes 16 game stat line versus the last 10 non-Mahomes MVPs that you tweeted out. And then within 24 hours, Nick Wright, who we love, does a great job, does really, really good work on First Things First, literally had the graphic up, no attribution. I was miffed for you. Did you see that? Do you
I
have any
did.
thoughts?
Maybe it's a coincidence. They used a different number of games. I've talked to Nick on his radio show many years back. I have a lot of respect for him, and obviously he sort of does. He's the Chiefs hype man on TV that I try to
Yes.
be in print from time to time. So,
That's good. Good call.
I appreciate his work. Yeah, I don't know if he got that idea from me or not, but it was something I've been sitting on for a while. I hadn't really run the numbers, but it was going into this game, I knew this is his 16th playoff game, and I still consider 16 to be a full season.
Yeah, same.
And just knowing that if we won, he'd be 13-3, which is like a tremendous regular season record for any quarterback. So when the game was done, I pulled up the spreadsheet because I wasn't going to sleep anytime soon. I can tell you that. And ran the numbers, and it was just as glorious as I thought. I mean, you may have the stats right in front of you,
I do.
but
You want me to read them?
yes. Well,
Let
so
me
let's
let's
let
go
me let
over.
me tell you what it is. Like, so
Okay.
we're talking about the last 10, and I made it clear, non-Mahomes MVPs, because of course
Mhm.
Mahomes' MVP seasons were particularly spectacular, and
They were.
that might have biased the numbers. But the last 10 quarterbacks, I think Adrian Peterson actually won an MVP award in there.
Right.
And these are not cheapies. We're talking about 4 Aaron Rodgers seasons, 2 Tom Brady's, a Peyton
Matt
Manning,
Ryan.
Lamar Jackson and Cam Newton being the running guys on the
Oh,
list, and then the random one from Matt Ryan.
oh
That's
yeah.
the most random one on the list, I think.
Yeah, for
But
sure.
we're still talking about and these are of course their best seasons, and their stats are basically indistinguishable from what Patrick Mahomes has done in the playoffs. They
Yeah.
they averaged 13.1 wins and 2.7 losses. He's 13-3.
Yeah.
Their completion percentage, 67.1%. His is 66.8%.
Yep.
They averaged 4,330 yards in their MVP season. He has 4,561 yards in the playoffs. 40 touchdowns for them, 38 for him, 6.5 interceptions for them, 7 for him. I didn't include this. They got sacked 29 times for 188 yards. He's been sacked 30 times for 210 yards. They had 276 rushing yards and 3 rushing TDs. He had 443 rushing yards and 5 TDs. So yeah, if you had to pick one year versus the other, it's six of one or half dozen of another. I don't think you'll get a consensus. He's basically performed like a regular season MVP in 16 playoff games against playoff defenses with all the pressure in the world. That is why. Oh yeah, we'll get into the Ravens game coming up, but that is
Mhm.
why I don't care if we're playing the Monstars from Space Jam. I have faith that when all the pressure is on both sides, Patrick Mahomes is in my corner.
What's crazy about that too, also, is that not only are they playoff teams in those 16 games, but he's advanced so far every time, obviously setting the record for most consecutive postseasons with 2+ wins,
Mhm.
that they're not just wild card teams. These are AFC championships and Super Bowls, and I mean, the best of the best of the best every single year. And I mean, performing like an MVP in that sample size is, I mean, completely mind
And
blowing. It's unheard
and
of.
let's not forget the weather here either, guys. I mean, these
Yes.
games
Yep.
are all being played in January and February.
Right.
He
Yep.
doesn't play in a dome. A lot of the teams in
I
the
would say
AFC,
almost all of them are outdoors because
almost
almost
Yeah.
all
all
of
of
them
them
are
are
at
outdoors.
Arrowhead.
Right.
Right, exactly
Right.
right. Exact with the exception of the Super Bowls and the game that he just
Right.
played in Buffalo. They're all
So
cold weather
so
games at Arrowhead in January. So pretty amazing. I wanted to build off of that, Randy. This is not quite as technical and as deep as yours, but I did want to show a little love to our guy Travis Kelsey. This actually was brought to my attention by one of our
I saw
listeners.
that one as well. Yeah,
Yeah,
this is a great stat. I wish I'm so
yeah,
mad at myself for not picking up on that one. That was
sure. I mean, you should have added this to it, but Caveman Jesus, one of our listeners, brought this to our attention. Travis Kelsey in 16 playoff games in the Mahomes era. So this does include some cameos by Chad Henne in
sure,
there,
sure.
but
And basically in the 16 games that Patrick Mahomes started in the
correct.
postseason.
1,400 yards, 17 touchdowns. And I compared this not to MVPs because tight ends are not wearing the MVPs, but do you know what the single season records for tight ends in receiving touchdowns and receiving yards are respectively off the top of your
I'm
head?
assuming it's Gronk's sophomore year is I think the gold standard when you talk about tight ends. The best career Travis Kelsey, the best peak, the best individual season. I think you have to go with Gronkowski.
That's correct. And that is the record, single season tight end touchdown record, 17 receiving touchdowns by Gronk in 2011. So tied that 17 in 16 games. That's exactly the same for Kelsey. Again, in the playoffs, not,
Mm-hmm.
against
Mm-hmm.
these patsies in the AFC East that Gronk was getting touchdowns thrown to,
Dunking
up two
all over him.
scores in the
Yeah.
fourth quarter,
I mean,
padding
Travis
his stats.
Kelsey in the 16 games of the Patrick Mahomes era, he scored a touchdown in 12 of those games, like at
That's
least one.
crazy.
Like the
It's crazy.
consistency is absurd.
Yeah.
And then the single season receiving yards record for a tight end is Travis Kelsey's. It's 1,416 yards in 2020. So, I mean, he's only 16 yards off of his own single season, regular season tight end record all time pace in the playoffs. I mean, we're talking 16 playoff games. He has the same number of touchdowns as the single season record, and he's 16 yards off of the single season record for receiving yards, which he set in the playoffs. That's bananas. That's almost crazier than the Mahomes numbers. I mean, it's absurd.
I mean, having two all-time goats are arguable all-time goats at the positions who both play at a better level against postseason competition and postseason weather. I think we have a pretty good handle on why the Chiefs are 13-3 in their last 6 postseasons. And like you said, winning 2 playoff games at least in 5 consecutive years. They had done that once in my lifetime before 2019. They had won before 2018. They had won what 4 playoff games in like 40 years, and they've done at least 2. That's the thing. It's like sitting down for a playoff game with the expectation of winning now. It's like, and winning is I don't want the fact that winning is normal in the postseason. I don't want that feeling to become normal. If
Yeah.
that makes sense. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like I think the 40 years of scars that I suffered prior to 2018, I think I've overcome them. Like I know we can lose. Well, obviously we have lost in that span, but I know I don't go into a game expecting to lose. I don't, even when things are going wrong, and God knows there were certainly moments in the Bills game where 5 years ago we'd be like, oh, here we go. I know exactly how this ends. Whether it's the butt fumble with Andrew Luck, or the catch my own pass from Marcus Mariota, or missed field goals from everybody from the kicker who should not be named to Pete Stoyanovich to Morton Anderson to Lawrence Tynes. Like now, when something just just unforgivable like what Mecole Hardman did happens, I'm angry. I'm
Sure.
scared, but I'm not despondent. I'm not resigned to losing. There's still that part of me that says they'll find a way to make this worse. And it's interesting this year because, of course, in the past, we'll find a way to make this work because the offense will come through. Now it's like, we'll find a way to make it work because our defense will hold.
Yes.
That's exactly
we
what
need
happened.
the offense to scratch across a couple more because the defense is going to hold it down. It's funny, thinking about a team like San Francisco that just broke their streak of like trailing by 5 or more entering the fourth quarter. They were.
I saw that stat in the middle of the fourth quarter. I'm like,
yeah.
Oh my God! Like, how is that possible? How is a team that's been to the Super Bowl?
Right.
And then Aaron Rodgers had a stat like that too.
He did
a year or two ago, and he broke a 20-something game streak.
Yeah,
of not having come back in the fourth quarter. It's
and
insane.
That
it's crazy.
Seems kind of. I mean, it's crazy to us as Chiefs fans, but that does seem like it's kind of the expectation that you shouldn't be able to come back all the time, and yet we've obviously seen this insane playoff stretch, which has included some of the greatest comebacks in franchise history, if not all of them, in this stretch.
I mean, we take for granted things that no one should ever take for granted, which is the idea that you can come back in the fourth quarter of a playoff game. Like, I'll give credit to Nick Wright. They had another great stat on their Monday show that I had not picked up on, which was in playoff games where Patrick Mahomes had trailed by 7 points. We're all familiar with the 10-point deficit, which is a combined regular season postseason stat. But when down by 7 or more points at any point in a playoff game, specifically playoff game, Patrick Mahomes is 8-2.
Mm-hmm.
It's crazy.
Every other playoff team, I think, since Patrick Mahomes, I think they start this in 2018.
Since 2018, that's correct.
I believe, I'm doing this off the top of my head, I believe the winning percentage was 171.
You almost got it. 178. They are 13-60.
13
and he's 8-2.
Tom Brady is, I think, 8-9 or 9. He's like
Brady's
just under
10-11.
10-11, right? One game under 500.
Peyton 3-9. Mahomes 8-2.
The established GOAT is like almost 500, and that's amazing. I mean, when losing, like we're literally we're biasing the sample by saying you have to be losing. Like, it's not like, when you have a certain number of interceptions or number of yards, you're actually looking at the score. Like, that is what determines who wins and loses. The score, you're down a touchdown. To be 500 or close to it in that situation is remarkable. And again, in the postseason, 8-2. 8-2. It's just absurd. And I think I have. It's not that I take for granted that Patrick Mahomes can do it. I think the mistake I think we make is we take for granted that it's easy to do that. Like when I saw that stat that the 49ers had literally not done that in like the last 21 games, I was honestly shocked, and I shouldn't be shocked because it's hard to come back in the fourth quarter. But Patrick Mahomes has set a standard so high, he has adjusted my comprehension of how easy it is to come back to the point where I look at I guess it's like you live in the penthouse for so long that you walk the streets and you see somebody taking the bus, and you're like, they have buses? Like,
right.
Like, right. They don't have their own private jet? Like, what's going on here? Like, that's how it feels after 6 years of this, that, normalcy, that like mediocrity. And I don't mean that as an insult, just averageness is incomprehensible to us now.
Yeah. Real quick, before we jump into that Bills game, does that 8-2, does that include the Patriots AFC Championship game loss? Because
I believe it does. That's
the
one.
They trailed by 14 in that game.
Well, right, but the point that I'm making there is he tied the game.
Right, exactly. He never got the ball back.
And then lost the coin flip.
Sure.
So,
think about it.
That one doesn't even really count.
Well, the third, there's only lost 3, period, right?
Right.
The third, the only game he didn't, I believe, is the Bengals game, which is always the exception, which is always the anomaly.
Yes.
Right.
It's that game, and then obviously the Super Bowl where they never didn't trail by more than 7. So.
Yep, it's wild. All right, Rany, we're going to let you pick the next narrative that we're going to talk about the Bills. It's either going to be the first road playoff game, the Chiefs owning the Bills being cursed, Josh Allen versus Patrick Mahomes, Taylor Swift ruining football, or mystery door number 6, your choice.
Let's quickly dispense with the Taylor Swift. It's funny because, both visually and metaphorically, Taylor Swift was obscured in this game by Jason Kelce.
Yes.
Right. If you even bring up like that Taylor somehow was a distraction in this game, you're outing yourself because
Mhm.
Taylor was in the background. All I saw, if Taylor Swift acted in any way remotely like how Jason Kelsey, as much a look at me, obviously not topless, that would have
I was
created
gonna
its own
say
sensation,
that
but
would be
just
quite.
had brought as much spotlight on herself celebrating. And this is a man deliriously happy for his brothers scoring a touchdown in the playoff game.
Mhm.
What he did was a completely natural reaction. If Taylor Swift had done that, it would have caused the stadium to implode upon itself. I believe Skip Bayless would have been raptured probably
Yeah,
by this point.
definitely. Definitely.
So she did nothing. Like, she didn't even do anything. So let's if we're going to talk about anything, it'd just be that Jason Kelsey was having the time of his life. And yeah, I will say this: that whatever suite Taylor Swift is in at any Chiefs game is immediately like the center of the universe now.
Yes.
It seems like the coolest place in the world. If they sold tickets, it would, like, the highest priced tickets in the history of mankind would be
It'd be like Eras
for
tour
one
ticket.
open spot in the
Yeah.
booth, whatever suite that they're in, because everybody there, it's just random celebrities. She does have that gravitational pull that she just pulls celebrities into her orbit in a cool way. So you never know who's going to be there. Blake Lively will probably be there. It's like not even a big deal anymore. And
Yep.
it's another thing that's like we just take for granted that, like, world class celebrities are going to be rooting for the Chiefs at suite. Even that wasn't happening a year ago.
Right.
But now we have, there's a supermodel, Cara, what's her name? Cara Delevingne.
Cara
I don't know.
Delevingne.
I don't know how
Yeah.
to say her name, but obviously there was the Jets game where like just Hugh Jackman and just like random
Ryan
people.
Reynolds
Yeah,
and
Ryan Reynolds. Yep.
They're the Lakers. They're the Showtime Lakers. They've
Yes.
kind of always been the Showtime Lakers on the field, at least offensively. This year, ironically, for the first time, they're not really the Showtime Lakers offensively, but they're the Showtime Lakers in terms of the people who are there. Like, if Jack Nicholson shows up in the suite, I will not be surprised.
Yeah.
So let's dispense with that. But what I think we should talk about is the Bills. You talk about the curse part of it.
Mhm.
I don't think you two are old enough to remember Scott Norwood.
I've seen it. I was
Right,
7
you
at
weren't
the
there
time.
live.
No.
7. Okay,
Right,
you might have been
right.
right on the fringe.
Yep.
It is. I do truly feel bad for Bills fans. They are. We've been in the dungeon with them, right? Like we were paroled about 5-6 years ago, but Bills, Vikings, Lions, who are making their own run here. The Browns, screw the Chargers. But the Browns, those are teams, I probably put the Chargers there. Like, certainly relative to the Broncos and Raiders, yes, the Chargers get a bit of a pass. But I feel sympathy for those fans, and it's real sympathy because we've been there. We were there a long time. I don't know why we were chosen to be paroled and they were not, but we remember. We remember the times with them in prison, and I do feel bad for them. But
in the pit, we were in the pit together.
We were in the
they're still in their own pit.
They jumped into their pit and they didn't come out this time. But it was really, it says something that even when he missed a kick, and I will say, I don't know how you guys felt, but I watched the games the week before, and in that Steelers game, the Bills won comfortably, but he had one blocked kick and then one kick he shanked. And
yes,
I remember thinking, I'm
badly.
like, it's like this. I like having Harrison Butker on my side, and I like the fact that Tyler Bass is on their side. Like, I just, it was kind of the thing, you put a pin in it and you're like, well, if this game comes down to the kickers, that's another thing that as a Chiefs fan, I can't believe I'm saying this, but I feel more confident on my side than the other side.
Totally. Was it you who tweeted that he was a ticking time bomb? I think I saw that.
Yeah, I mean, I felt all along. It was just if this game came, and then when we saw how windy it was like, okay. Like, at first I'm like, oh, this is how's that going to affect the passes, etc. But then I thought about from the kicking side. I'm like, man, Tyler Bass in the wind after last week. This, so when he lined up, I wouldn't say I predicted it, but I was like very much, comfortable with the fact that they had to take a mid-range field goal attempt in that weather, knowing worst case scenario, it's a minute and a half left and Patrick Mahomes with the ball in 2 timeouts. Like, there weren't a lot of bad scenarios there, short of going for it on 4th down, which they 4th and 9 they weren't going to do. So, but it's fun because in the moment, he missed it, and it just didn't occur to me. Oh my God, it's wide right. Like it did that part did. It's been so long. It's been 35 years, 34 years, 34 years since Scott Norwood, which was a 49-yard kick. This was a 44-yard kick, and 49 back then was like 55 today. Like guys missed. You 49 was like maybe a 60-40 proposition. Like he was favored to make it, but not by much. 44, that's not it's not a gimme, but that's, I don't know, at least an 80-85%.
Yeah, it's a high probability play in the modern NFL for sure.
My fact checking is saying 47 on the wide right on Norwood.
Oh, 47. I take about 47.
Certainly, okay. I mean, even though it was in a Super Bowl and you're down, so it's either a win or lose kick. Like the circumstances there, obviously, is
right because they were kicking for the lead.
Exactly. It was, and with no time left. I mean, it was a win or lose kick, but still. You said that the Bills weren't going to go for it on 4th and 9. Do you think that, I know hindsight's 20/20, and I know he missed the kick, but even if he had made the kick, with the way that the Chiefs are moving the ball, the chances of them going down, like my heart feels like it's 100. It's certainly extremely high that Harrison Butker is going to go hit a field goal, and the Chiefs are going to win that. Looking back on it, I mean, going for it on 4th and 9 doesn't seem like that crazy of a proposition.
The way I always judge whether or not an opposing team should what the quote unquote analytics. The analytics in my head will tell you if you go for it and I'm mad, like I'm worried more, then you should go for it as the opposing team, right? And certainly in the Patrick Mahomes era, we have seen teams go for it so much more, and it's very annoying. Like not on kicks, but certainly on punts. Like how many times are you actually upset that the other team is punting? Like how many, sort of like, 4th and 16. Like when are you actually like, oh, they're going for it? Great. I feel so good.
Right.
Never. And no. I will say right now, if they had gone for it on 4th and 9, I think I would have been terrified.
Yes.
Sure.
Because especially watching them streak open in the middle of the end zone on the second down play. I mean, I agree with you.
And I mean, it's partly because, obviously if you go for it, you've got a chance to take the lead. But also because if you make it, not only are you in a good position to take the lead, you're gonna drain the clock. Like
burn the clock down,
the fear when that drive started. How much? There was a ton of time.
8 minutes. 8 minutes. Yeah, 8 minutes.
And the friends I was sitting with early on were like, "Wow, they're gonna take this all the way down." And I'm like, "No, that's not possible."
Right.
And
that's
then
what I thought too.
They got to midfield and it was already like ticking under 4. I'm like, "Oh my God, this is possible." That was what terrified. Now, obviously, unless they got it under 13 seconds, there was always a chance. But still, I would much rather not have it come down to that.
No. Can you imagine if it did? Jeez. And Allen was criticized for not hitting Diggs underneath on the one that he missed into the end zone. That was a harder throw, but would have been a touchdown. He was open. Certainly, I don't think the decision to throw that deep ball was. I mean, I think
this is why video is good, right? This is why we've at the time it's like, oh wow, they should have gone underneath. But you actually break it all down. If he had gone to Diggs underneath, 5
of the 10?
I mean, I don't know if he gets the first down. I think that there are linebackers in place, but it's certainly like 3rd and 2 or whatever. I think you can make the argument, yes, it would have made sense because it would have, again, drained more time off the clock. Because even if he hits the shot to the end zone, okay, they're up before with a minute and a half. I'm like, I'm okay with that.
It was like right after the 2-minute warning. Yeah. It would have been, Chiefs would have been down 4, which also, I always think about like, would I rather be down 4 or 3? Because if I'm down 3, obviously the field goal ties it. But if I'm down 4, the coach is forced to go for the win. Right. Sometimes I like that. I like the aggressiveness that you have every 4th down in your bag from there on in. And I mean, who knows if the Bills would have been down 4 on that drive instead of settling for that field goal? They would have, they would have.
Well, it depends on how much time is on the clock. I mean, obviously, when we were it was 13 seconds, down 3, yes, please.
There.
I'll take 3. That's fine. But with a minute 40, I'd still prefer the point. I'd still prefer the option. But but yeah, you don't want it to become a crutch. I do see that with coaches too many times settling for 3 because they could live to fight another day. But I will say, like, since very, very early on in the Patrick Mahomes era, like their aggressiveness, like Andy Reid before, even with Alex Smith, if there's 30 seconds left in the half, he's taking a knee. And it was incredible to see the confidence even very early in Patrick's career that with 30 seconds left, They were taking, one timeout. They were going to take a shot to get 30 yards to get that field goal before halftime. So that wasn't the issue to me. But on that play, everything I know about that is Josh Allen he was not like his job was, if the first option was open, take the throw. Yeah, it wasn't his job to even look at Stephon Diggs on that play.
Take the shot. Yeah.
What happened there was Chris Jones pushed their all-star left tackle into him at the very last moment and prevented him from getting the throw off. I didn't appreciate that fully at the time, but you watch it, and this is the thing: Chris Jones, no sacks in this game, and it's easy to forget. Like, that was such a huge part of the Chris Jones narrative for so long. Was 0 playoff sacks.
That's right.
But he is still such a force. Like, when the game matters, he's played well in the postseason, and in the most crucial moments, he has always stepped up. I mean, this game he forced a fumble. We didn't recover because Jamar Connor didn't jump on the ball. If he did, then the story would be, Chris Jones caused a fumble, caused a turnover.
And Josh Allen's careless with the ball, which didn't become a narrative. Everyone's talking about how fantastic Josh Allen played, but obviously, if he's driving down there and fumbles the ball back to the Chiefs, that's just turnover-prone Josh Allen. So you're right. I mean, that was a big narrative.
I mean, and Josh Allen in this game. I mean, let's go back to the first half briefly here, because honestly, it was one of the few times all season where it felt like our defense was just sort of powerless to resist an opposing offense. The only game that really reminds me of that was the Packers loss, where they scored a season high 27. And I have to give the Bills some credit. Their game, I don't think the Chiefs expected their game plan to be so focused on the run, and just getting 6-7 yards at a time, either by handing it off or by having just Josh Allen run with it. And I mean, they ate up an enormous amount of clock, which doesn't, clock management and time of possession is highly overrated, unless you have a big lead, and obviously they didn't. But it was like they were chewing up so much clock that you knew the game was going to come down to fewer possessions than your average game. And the fewer possessions you have, obviously, the more critical every single one of them is. So it just kind of heightened the tension. But they scored 17 points before halftime. And I mean, Josh Allen was playing extremely well. And it's funny because now everyone's like, gee, he only threw past the sticks like twice the whole game or whatever. But I'll tell you this: in the first half, I wasn't thinking, geez, he's not throwing the deep ball. No, I was thinking they're getting 5-6 yards at a time, but it's irresistible. You can score a touchdown on every drive if you're getting 4 or 5 yards every single play.
Right.
And that's kind of what they were doing. So, as always, all credit to Steve Spagnuolo, because second half they gave up 7 points. That's 7 games in a row. The Chiefs have not given up more than 7 points in the second half of a game. They came out, they took the lead with their first drive, and then get all credit to Josh Allen, because that touchdown that he did throw in the second half to Khalil Shakir, the first touchdown that L'Jarius Sneed gave up all season.
Yeah, it was a dot.
When he threw it, I mean, they just took the lead, and it was like, we're about to go into the fourth quarter, and I could have been, I should have been angry at somebody, and I wasn't angry. I was just like, you just tip your cap. It was an incredible throw, and on third and goal from like the 13.
Yeah,
just a dot. What do you do? I mean, just Josh Allen. There's so much of this. Oh, Josh Allen just doesn't have what it takes to win in the playoffs. There's questions about this is Josh Allen's narrative. No, Josh Allen is an amazing quarterback who just has the incredible misfortune of playing, in the exact same era as Patrick LaVon Mahomes II. Like, that's all this is. Josh Allen, if in a universe where Patrick Mahomes does not exist, Josh Allen, I would have a very strong case to be the best quarterback in football. It's, after Mahomes, it's him or Lamar Jackson. We're facing them in back-to-back weeks. I mean, I don't think you can make a credible case for anybody outside of those two after Patrick Mahomes.
Well, let's talk about that, Rany, because obviously the defense stepped up in the second half, but there was a great graphic that was tweeted out from Bruno H. Mioto the other day that showed, it's just an infographic with Patrick Mahomes' EPA per play for every game of his career. And that included the playoffs. And the the Bills game, and for reference, so we're going to circle back to this chart when we talk about the Ravens. Lamar's EPA per play for this season, and he's going to win his second MVP this year, is a 0.15 per EPA per play. So that's really good. That's like MVP level over a season good. Patrick Mahomes against the Bills in the AFC Championship game, 0.56 EPA per play. So roughly 4 times better than Lamar in his second MVP season. 13 seconds, 0.51 EPA per play. And then this past Sunday, 0.57 EPA per play, which would be, if you're counting, the Texans at 0.7 EPA per play.
The Texans was his best game.
That was his best playoff
this one,
game.
I think, was tied for second.
That's correct.
All you need to know is the 13 seconds game was Patrick Mahomes' worst performance
game against the Bills.
The Bills.
Unbelievable. I mean, it's just so this week was tied with the Titans game in the AFC Championship game in the 2019 season for his second best playoff game. His other Bills game in the 2020 season, the AFC Championship game, that was tied with the Eagles for third or fourth best, however you want to do that. And then
pretty good
13
to be
seconds is right
0.56 in the Super Bowl, by the way.
Right, pretty good against an absolute juggernaut of an Eagles team. And then 13 seconds is right behind that. So the Bills are up there with 3 of his top 6 best playoff games, all against the same team, all against the same superstar quarterback. I know they don't play each other, but I mean, like you said, you got to feel for Bills fans to run into 3 all-time great playoff performances from the same quarterback in 4 years.
Right, and again, I feel bad for Bills fans on some level, but I do especially I just want to push back against this narrative that Josh Allen somehow doesn't have what it takes. Like the man scored a game winning. It's easy to forget about the 13 seconds and what that meant.
Right,
but I remember how I felt. Like Josh Allen just threw a touchdown, got the ball back with like a minute 15 or whatever, drove the length of the field and scored a game-winning touchdown with 13 seconds left to knock out, the Kansas City Chiefs and go to the AFC Championship game. He never touched the ball again. If you are going to let what happened after that, because Patrick Mahomes is on the other side, affect your perception of Josh Allen, then I don't really. I think you're more interested in clickbait or outrage farming than actual analysis. Josh Allen is a phenomenal quarterback, and I do hope that in whatever rare season the Chiefs are not Super Bowl bound, then that maybe that one of those years that they'll have their New Orleans Saints moment. They'll have their Drew Brees take them to the promised land one time moment. But I wanted to get back to the Tyler Bass thing because, for so long the narrative of the Chiefs was, if the kickers got involved, it was a disaster for us. I mean, I feel like we haven't suffered quite as much as certain franchises in the playoffs, but at least until this game, I mean, they have Scott Norwood, but that was really the one time the Bills had a playoff game decided by missing a field goal kick. Maybe there's some other playoff game that they've had in their history. I'm not.
I think you're correct.
But with the Chiefs, I mean, 5 years ago, before Patrick Mahomes' first playoff game, before the game against the Colts, I wrote an article for the Ringer. The headline was "The Untold Misery of the Chiefs Postseason Kicking Woes."
No,
because we focus on Lynn Elliott, and certainly that's obviously that's
fair.
You miss 3 field goals in a game where you're the number 1 seed and you lose by 3 points, you're going to be remembered. But it's not remotely the only one.
Yep.
And I had a chart in this in which I broke it down since 1971. Since because it doesn't start with Lynn, it starts with Jan Stenerud, Hall of Fame kicker Jan Stenerud missing a field goal against the Dolphins on the Christmas Day, the only double overtime game in NFL history. It was before even my time, but it's still, it was the last playoff game the Chiefs would have for 15 years. Like everything spiraled out of control after that. But from that moment through when I wrote this, so through the 2018 season, 2018 regular season, the Chiefs had tried 35 field goal kicks in the playoff and missed 14 of them.
14. So 21 out of 35.
Yeah, they made 60%. They missed 40% of their field goals.
Brutal,
outrageous.
And here's the thing:
and playoff kicks aren't very important, are they?
And I broke it down. There were 6 of those kicks were 47 yards or more. So the Scott Norwood number, you said 47.
Okay.
So, and they were 3 of 6, which not great, but like, okay, those are the hardest kicks.
Respectable. Yep.
Kicks of 46 yards or less, they were 18 of 29.
Oh no.
And like let's take out the gimme. So I actually between kicks of between 28 and 46 yards.
Yeah.
They made 9, missed 10.
What?
They missed more than half their field goal attempts on kicks of between 28 and 46 yards. But here's the thing, like, and I mean, I could, give you all of them. I mean, like I mentioned, like I remember Pete Stoyanovich. That was actually a longer field goal, I think, but that was in the 97 divisional round game against the Broncos. The 14-10 game where he made the field goal. They called a false start, I believe, moved it back to 5 yards. He doinked it. So the Chiefs, instead of being down 1, were down 4 on their final drive. They got to the 20-yard line.
Yeah.
Where they could have kicked a game-winning field goal, instead had to go for it and didn't make it. Like, there's so many of these. More in the 38-31 game, the no punt game against the Colts and Peyton Manning in 2003. Morton Anderson, Hall of Famer. Morton Anderson missed like a 30-yarder, I want to say, in that game. I mean, it's awful. But when I wrote this, one thing that had occurred to me is like, let me look and see how the opponents did against the Chiefs. Because when you think about, if there's one event in a football game that you have as a team, you have like zero control over, it is what does the opposing kicker do against you? I mean, obviously you can block it, but that's extremely rare.
Yep.
Other than that, it is completely out of control. And actually, one of the most it's a small but very significant marker for regression. Like when you are trying to evaluate a team, like let's say I don't know, you want to know how do you think the Jacksonville Jaguars will do in 2024? One of the things you want to normalize is you look at the success of opposing kickers against them, because it's completely random. If opposing kickers nailed 98% of their field goal attempts or some ridiculous number, you can be completely certain that's going to regress the next year. We know there's certain things on the field, like fumble recoveries. Teams on average will recover half of all fumbles on either side. So
unless
if you're
playing in the Bills this weekend.
Well, half of one is it's a coin flip. But the point is, if you recovered 78% of the fumbles in a season, you're probably going to regress the next year. But nothing regresses harder than what your opponents do when they're kicking field goals. It's luck, right? In that same stand where the Chiefs were 21 of 35, so they tried 35 field goals, they missed 14. Their opponents tried 40 field goals in the playoffs. They made 35 of them.
That's
But
ridiculous.
it's more ridiculous because all 5 that they missed were on kicks of 47 yards or more. They tried 11. Sure. They were 6 of 11, and
6 of
4
11
of
still
them,
good.
6 of 11 is not bad, especially because this includes games from the 80s and 90s. Again, but not only that, but of those 5 kicks, I'll give you the breakdown here. Yeah, all 5 came in games that their opponents won anyway. And in 4 of them, in that game, the opposing kicker kicked a game-winning field goal anyway. Your premium in the Christmas Day game, the Dolphins kicker missed a 52-yarder, but then eventually kicked the game ender.
Sure.
Pete Stoyanovich, before he was a Chief and cost the Chiefs the playoff game, won a playoff game for the Dolphins against the Chiefs. He had missed a 57-yarder and then nailed a 58-yarder in like 1989. That's like 65 today. I mean, it was historic, and he won the game. It came down to a 58-yard field goal, and he made it. And then in the Lynn LA game, actually, the Colts kicker missed 2 longer field goals. It was very cold, but his kicks were not gimmies, and he did make 1, and that was the difference in the game. But from 46 yards or less, 29 of 29, they never missed a field goal. And obviously, I think glaring example of this was the Steelers game with Alex Smith in 2017, the 18-16 game.
Yep.
6 of 6.
Yep.
If their kicker missed a single field goal, Chris Boswell, he hit from 43, 43, 45, 36, 38, 22. Okay, fine. The last one's a gimme, but I mean, you missed even one of those, Chiefs win.
Yeah. Yep.
So they hit 29 of 29 from under 46 yards. So and I should have known. I had a feeling something was different because I wrote that 2 days before the Colts game. Patrick
And
Mahomes' first career playoff game. And in the Colts game, you may remember.
I remember.
Yes,
I was
right
going to bring it
before
up if you
halftime.
didn't.
Right before halftime, the Chiefs are up. They're up pretty comfortably, 24-7. But with a minute 40, the Colts got the ball back. Andrew Luck moved them down the field. They ran out of time. It was, the Chiefs' 5-yard line, 3rd and 1, but 3 seconds were left. The greatest kicker in NFL history, Adam Vinatieri, comes out to kick a 23-yarder. No good. If ever there was a notion, from the very beginning that Patrick Mahomes had already dispelled the curse that fell upon this franchise, it was in that moment. What's ironic is, so he missed that. The next 2 field goal attempts against the Chiefs in the playoffs were made, and then Kaimi Fairbairn missed one in the 51-31 game against the Texans, which we all forgot about because when you're coming back from 24-0 to take a lead at halftime, you kind of forget about one random field goal attempt.
We were lucky they even kicked the field goal there.
Yeah, but since that kick, that the opposing kickers had made 20 kicks in a row.
Oh, wow.
In the playoffs.
Wow.
Until Tyler Bass. So now, Harrison Butker in that time frame has been outstanding. I mentioned 21 of 35 going into it was actually 20 of 34 because Harrison Butker, you may remember, missed his first playoff field goal attempt in the 22-21 Titans game.
That's right.
The Marcus Mariota game.
Lost by 1.
Right? Like even he was not immune to this. And that is on his resume. And I mean, that's a missed field goal in a game you lose by 1 point and blow an 18-point lead. That not great. And to the Chiefs' credit, they stuck with him. And since then, he's missed 3 field goals in 30 attempts in the playoffs. So he's a 90% kicker since then. He missed a 33-yarder against the Browns in 2021.
Yeah.
A 42-yarder actually in the field goal, and then the Super Bowl last year. We're going to forget about that one. And then a 50-yarder in the 13 seconds game as well.
Right.
So, but those were at least a 50-yard. That was a 50-yard attempt. He's perfect. 11 of 11 from within 33. He's from 47 or less. He is 20 of 22 in his career. So
pretty good.
There's a reason why, even last year when he was struggling all regular season, I didn't want to move on from Harrison Butker. We have experienced the worst luck with kickers, for over a generation. And now we finally have a kicker who has proven he can do it at a 90% clip, more or less. And now it's our chance to win games because the other team is missing kicks. So this last game was really, I think poetic on many levels, both for the Bills' history, but I think also as a testament to how the Chiefs have had this reversal of fortune in so many ways.
They have. We were thinking about old 90s playoff games there, and I was reminded of a Colts quarterback against the Chiefs, Jim Harbaugh. I know you're locked in right now with us. Have you been told what happened? That he just agreed with the Chargers?
No. Is that official?
Chargers hiring Jim Harbaugh as coach.
I picked up my phone and I have a text here.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
I thought he would stay at Michigan. Well, back to hating him, I guess.
I was
okay.
Say, I'm sure that's a quick switch to flip. Kind of an interesting, very interesting hire for sure. We'll see how things shake out with the old AFC West rivals. But, they tried 3 straight coaches that hadn't been a head coach at any level before in their last 3 hires. And so I guess they're going for a little bit more proven, a little bit more winning coach. So
I'd like to say, winning at the college level is nothing like winning in the pros, but he did win. He did win at the pros too.
He's like the 4th winningest by percentage coach in NFL history. His brief time, his 4 seasons in the NFL were pretty successful. Let's shift gears again. So RIP to your Michigan head coach, but I'm sure they will. That's a great job, obviously, whoever's,
and we talked about, not that long ago, we were talking about how I didn't think he would, why would you leave such a perfect job?
Right.
But I guess the challenge of trying to beat Patrick Mahomes, he just could not resist it. Okay, good
Right.
luck.
I mean,
Yeah.
Good luck to you,
Famous
Jim.
last
we're
words. Yeah,
talking
yeah.
about a team that has been the preseason AFC West favorites for 10 years in a row.
They have. That's true.
So
They have
this is a
very big
pretty
preseason
good
cachet.
job that he's taking here, Rany.
They have.
Clearly. I mean, the Chargers have they're what, 10-time defending AFC West preseason champions.
They're
So
That's
preseason
right.
juggernauts.
And they're also like 40 million over the cap, and it'll be fun.
well, it'll be we
enjoy.
can get some preemptive revenge by beating his brother on Sunday. So
we could
Woo, I
certainly,
like
and
that.
he will definitely be in attendance. So we'll get that rivalry going in a big way. Before we move on to that game, I did want to give a quick little shine to a guy that had been getting a ton of crap all year from everybody, Austin and I included.
I have no idea who you're talking about.
Yes, exactly. Right. It's the big surprise of the day for me, which was MVS. Of all the performances that happened, of all the ways that game would have gone, I didn't see 2 catches for 60 yards being on the bingo card, but yet Pat kept trusting him. He hit him, that sideline catch was kind of a bobble, but it was a really nice catch over the shoulder.
Mm-hmm.
And then the second catch deep down the field where Mahomes stepped up into the pocket and, a safety bearing down on MVS, which is of all the catches, of all the types of deep catches he could make, contact deep catches are not something that I thought he could ever do again, ever. And yet the safety barrels into him. He holds onto the ball. Just how much did you laugh when MVS comes up with 2 big catches in a big time game? How crazy was that?
I definitely laughed. It was absurd. And I won't say I predicted it,
Sure.
but there was a part of me that wasn't surprised because it's like this is the mark of a good franchise that even when players a player lets you down all season, that's the kind of player that steps like I've made this comparison before, but coming from the baseball side of things, the Chiefs do remind me a lot of like the St. Louis Cardinals in the sense that the organization's structure is so solid top to bottom that even if a player is struggling, it's not necessarily a sign that he's a bad player. Like there's a framework within the organization to get that player to improve, and to not give up on a player prematurely. And therefore, unless that player is not fixable. So in other words, the fact that the Chiefs still were giving MVS snaps all season long was itself a sign that like the organization thinks this is fixable. And this is an organization that has earned my trust to believe if they think that, they have a good reason to, right? Whereas the opposite side of that, which is for so long what rooting for the Kansas City Royals was like if something can go wrong, it will. If somebody you do trust in a big moment suddenly does something inexplicable, and so the fact that Mahomes was still trying to make it work, it reflects positively on him, but it also on some level reflects positively on MVS. The Chiefs still believe that he had the ability to do what he did.
Yeah.
It's so reminiscent to me of something I think was even more kind of inexplicable, which is last year in the AFC Championship game, tie game. Chris Jones has just forced single-handedly forced the Bengals to punt with like 40 seconds left, maybe. You could like go look back at the box score. And whatever you think about MVS right now, is not, or what you thought of him a week ago, is not remotely as fearful as we were of Sky Moore on punt returns, specifically on punt returns. Like last year, the well before we just the story of Sky Moore was, oh geez, he sucks. The narrative last year was Sky Moore might have a future as a wide receiver, but God in heaven, please do not ever let this man touch a punt. They've been fumbled like 3 times.
I think it was 4, maybe. It was way too much. I can't believe they kept throwing it back.
Way too much.
But
and with I'm looking it up. 39 seconds left.
Yeah.
Drew Chrisman punts 54 yards. Sky Moore gathers it in at the 18-yard line and goes for 29 yards. And suddenly, instead of starting at the 18-yard line, the Chiefs are at midfield.
Yeah.
With 1 timeout and 30 seconds left. These are movie script moments, right? You really when you write the movie, it's the guy who's been struggling all year, suddenly coming up big at the last moment. I don't know if it's necessary roughness where Scott Bakula hits the track star on the team who has a worse case of drops than MVS and hits him for the game tying touchdown.
Sure.
Actually, they would have been game tying, but they went for two. So I don't want to ruin the game, ruin the movie if anybody hasn't seen it. But I mean, it's really literally. I've seen movies where they all movie long they're setting up this narrative. This guy cannot hold on to a football. We're never going to throw it to him.
Yeah.
Just for that last moment. And that twice now in two playoff runs, the Chiefs have had a moment just like that. And so yeah, at this point, I mean, he's not in the circle of trust, but I think MVS is part of the game plan, in large part because, again, what the hell do you do with McCole Hardman at this point?
Right.
It's not the first time he's fumbled in the playoffs against the Bills.
No. Yeah,
he muffed that punt twice. He touched the ball twice in the red zone and fumbled both times. Shout out to Justin Watson. I mean, very underrated. Justin Watson's, again, one of those guys, not a star, not even an average player, but we wouldn't be where we are without his contributions and gathering in the really kind of pulling that fumble away from the Bills.
Right. They had it for a second. Absolutely.
Enormous. But then, again, and it's not a fumble. Oh, yeah, we hit hard. It's just the carelessness with which McCole, handles the football to be at the 1 yard line there and to think it's so important on first down. It wasn't fourth in goal on first down to be so careless to try and reach for the end zone. I just don't see how you can run him on those kinds of plays, jet sweeps. Maybe you still use him as a deep threat because you know what, if he fumbles, it's only after he's caught a 40 or 50 yard pass anyway.
Right.
Yeah. Like I mean, the Chiefs, much like MVS, they do seem to feel like they can use him, and so I
they don't
actually
have much
wonder.
Of a choice though.
They don't, I do wonder
thin.
if they want to change the narrative with him. Though I think it's not going to be on a jet sweep. It's not going to be on one of these backfield plays. I think it has to be downfield.
True. Okay, so let's move on to Baltimore. I feel like the Bills narrative, I mean, no final thoughts on Bills. I feel like that's pretty well in bed now. They're better than the Bills. They'll continue to be better than the Bills. And now we got to look at the presumptive two-time MVP in Lamar Jackson and the number one seed, one of the best teams in recent history, these Baltimore Ravens. For me personally, I felt that the Bills game, I was confident that they could play with them. I didn't know if they'd win, but I certainly felt like they could. This is a much larger mountain to climb this week for the Chiefs. It doesn't mean they can't get there. Obviously, it'd be silly at this point to ever count the Chiefs out of anything. But I assume you're also feeling that should be a harder game for the Chiefs than last week was.
So the Bills game, not that I'm a gambler, but I know what the odds makers say, that the Bills were favored, to win that game. It was, I think, a 2.5 point favorite, which 2.5 points is exactly home field advantage, essentially. So, the estimation was these were two dead even teams. The team with the home field will favor. And I did not feel that. I truly, not that I, was certain we'd win, but I felt the Chiefs should be favored because I felt their defense, it's not their fault, but they've had so many injuries, linebacker core. Like, I just felt like I had the one thing I was really confident about in the Bills game was we can score, we can move the ball, and we can score against the Buffalo Bills. I was not sure that they could do the same against our defense. And for the first half, they proved that they could. And, but as the Chiefs do, they figured out what works and what doesn't, and what the Bills were trying to accomplish, shut it down. And the Bills were not able to do that. Chiefs. I mean, we talk about this game, for everything we talk about the missed field goal, et cetera, and how close we came to, having the game tied. The reality is the Chiefs easily could have been winning by 14 points.
Certainly.
Right. Yeah.
Like I don't, statistically, they were clearly the better team in that game. And, it was the same stupid mistakes. We even mentioned not challenging the forward pass, the forward lateral on the third play from scrimmage of the entire
17.
game. Yeah, which would have made it third and 22, or I don't know if it's a 5 or 10 yard penalty, but third and very long.
Yeah.
And I mean they only got 3 on that drive, but
I think that would have been a loss of down if you illegal forward pass.
I
think it would have just been
you're
fourth
right.
down. I think that would have just ended their field goal
guaranteed punt. On and it was not just that they got 3 points, but it really set the narrative that they were just going to chew up clock and move the ball. If the Chiefs get that ball right away, having already deferred and getting the ball to start the second half as well, I mean, the whole game has changed. And I mean,
Yep.
I know that it can be frustrating because I think the people in the booth who are on the Chiefs side who are deciding whether or not, to tell Andy to challenge the play, they're looking at the same TV broadcasts we are, is my understanding, which is not ideal. But like, it's
Right.
the first replay they showed, I'm like, that's a forward pass. Like,
Right.
it wasn't a question, and I was quite shocked they never threw the flag. So stupid mistake. Like these are getting mistakes. That McCole Hardman's play, these are not instances where the Chiefs were getting beat on the field. They were beating themselves like they've been doing all season. Right. And it was a testament to just how much better they were than the Bills that they won the game anyway. But I felt like they were the better team. The Ravens, this is the 17th playoff game of Patrick Mahomes' career. I think this is the first time in 17 games that in my heart of hearts, I believe the Kansas City Chiefs are not the better, or at least that their opponent is the better team.
Sure.
There are games where I thought it was essentially even. Maybe the initial game against the Patriots, the Bengals game last year, where I thought, man, this is dead even. There's at least one game where I was foolish to think the Chiefs were better, and that was the Super Bowl against the Buccaneers, and not appreciating how much Eric Fisher's injury was the final domino, and just having no offensive line.
They had won 26 out of 27 games previous to that, so I understand you being confident in that team. That team was
right. And that's what it was, and also probably not appreciating how much the impact of Andy Reid's son being involved in a drunk driving incident probably emotionally, mentally, but did not help anybody.
Right.
But also that the offensive line was just non-existent. So they in retrospect, but in the moment, I've never gotten to a Chiefs playoff game with Patrick Mahomes thinking we should be the underdog.
Right.
We should be the underdog in this game. We are the underdog.
Yes.
By only 3.5 points, only 1 point,
Sure.
different than the Bills game, which to me is ridiculous. I mean, the Ravens, you don't want to get too hung up on one playoff game, but man, CJ Stroud is really good, and he's not Patrick Mahomes good, and he's a rookie, but the Ravens put him in a blender, and the Texans offense in a blender. I'm actually, I'm not sure what scares me more is their defense or Lamar Jackson. Prior to that game, Lamar Jackson's playoff record is spotty. And that's the thing I always come back to is, we know that Patrick Mahomes is at his best in the playoffs. It's funny because, last year he was, hobbled for 95% of it. So it's like, he was still really good, but it's like, he's been phenomenal in both playoff games in like cold weather. The only thing that keeps what he did against the Bills from being historic is that he only had 23 dropbacks in the game.
Right.
I mean, and he was practically perfect. He had 6 incompletions. He talked about like his 2 mistakes though, I think like second and third down, the corner routes to MVS and Kelsey.
Yeah.
But even he acknowledged that. Other than that, I'm not sure he had, a bad throw in any of those games. It was just
right.
So he's at his
other
best.
4 incompletions were throwaways. So
I was going to say, I was about to look that up. How many of them were actually throw?
I believe I saw it was 4 throwaways, the 2 overthrows, and everything else complete. That's pretty damn good. That's hard to
that is
criticize.
Absurd.
Yes.
I mean, that is absolutely absurd.
It is, Rany, this Baltimore team though. I don't know if you're a DVOA guy, but we bring that up on the show.
Yeah, no, DVOA is extremely valuable, and it's kind of scary. What are they? Third best defense in the 21st century?
They're actually the best defense in the 21st century.
The best. I thought it was okay.
That might have changed actually, but I did look today at their overall DVOA, and they are the 6th best team in the DVOA era, which goes back to the early 80s. So DVOA thinks this is the 6th best football team in the last 40 years.
How many of the 5 ahead of them didn't win the Super Bowl?
So that's a good question. One of them
is the 07
you will remember because it was the 2007 Patriots, the 18-1 Patriots. Yeah. The 2010 Patriots, who I believe also lost, that was the other team that lost to Eli, wasn't it? Or was that 2011?
I believe it was.
Eli was 08 and 11, I thought.
That could be. But
wait.
The 11?
No, the 2017.
Rodgers won.
So
2008 season.
The other two, the teams ahead of them are the 2007 and 2010 Patriots,
Uh-huh.
Then you also have the 1991 Washington team,
Who
and you
won
have the
the Super Bowl?
1985. You have the 1985 Bears,
Who won
and
the Super Bowl?
actually, that's only 4 teams, so they're actually fifth. I did the math
Oh
wrong
yeah.
on this,
Okay.
so they're actually fifth,
Okay,
the
so
fifth best team.
the 85 Bears and the 91 Washington. I mean, you could make it. I think 91 Washington is kind of the forgotten, like
Juggernaut.
all-time great
I
team.
mean,
Statistically, you make a case they're the best team of all time, and nobody remembers them like the 85 Bears. But okay,
Mhm.
those two teams are like, yeah, two of the best. And then the '07 Patriots, the the best, by acclamation, the best team in NFL history to not win a Super Bowl.
of course,
And
of
then
course.
you said the 2010 Patriots.
Yeah, it's hard
Yes.
to keep
That's
the
an interesting
Patriot
one. That's
seasons.
the team that that went 14-2 and then lost its first playoff game to
Hmm.
Mark Sanchez.
Oh yeah,
Oh,
sure.
that's
Well, yeah,
right.
That's interesting.
So
They
yeah,
had the
anything can
Gronk and
happen,
Aaron
guys.
Hernandez two tight end thing going, and
You never know. They lost 28-21. But of course, the thing to hang your head on here is the '07 Patriots, the greatest going into the Super Bowl, the greatest team of all time. They didn't lose to Eli Manning, guys. They lost to Steve Spagnuolo.
Hell
yes, they
yes.
did. Yes, they
And
did.
we talk about playoff Mahomes here, playoff Mahomes, playoff. We don't have stats, certainly not the same kind of stats that we do for Mahomes, but playoff Spags.
Yeah.
Like if you want to hang your head, like I think we should be the underdogs, but I am so looking forward to winning anyway. Like I'm so
Hmm.
hyped for this game because going into the playoffs, like we knew this is not the Chiefs at their best. It's a 4-game ladder, a 4-game juggernaut. Win the first two. Like I really broke this up into first 2 games. We don't have to see the 49ers or the Ravens. Those games are winnable, and we should win them. And if we do, we do no worse than what we've done in the past, which is get to the AFC Championship game.
Right. Right.
Everything from this point, on some level, everything from this point is gravy. Like yes, of course, I'll be disappointed if they lose, but
given how the season's gone, though, I mean that's pretty remarkable that they made it back here.
My rule in general is if you make it to the conference championship or the LCS, if you get to the final four of your sport, you have not had a fail. You've had a good season. You cannot call that a failure when you get that far.
Unless
And
there are only 4 teams in your sport. But yes,
in the major sports, yes. And certainly when you've done it 5 years in a row, now it's 6, and you're only 2 years, two behind what seemed to be just an absolutely impregnable record of 8.
Right.
We got to 6. I'm very, very happy with where we are now. Obviously, if we get spanked in this game, then it's going to,
It'll stink.
force a lot of reflection also on like what do we have to do to get better. And if we lose in excruciating fashion, then there'll always be that what if. So yes, I'm not saying I'm going to feel great if we lose by any means.
Honestly, if we get spanked in this game, we're going to join the Lions and the Niners on the other side of teams that got spanked by the Ravens this year. I mean, their big game performance this year has been unbelievable.
Outrageous.
When
they're
they're
very
playing
good.
A good team, they lock in.
And I mean, it's a cliche to say this, but look, this is going to come down to quarterbacks versus defensive coordinators, right? Because we Lamar Jackson, is a unique. He's not just about to win his second MVP, but he's just unlike anybody in the sport. I mean, him and Josh Allen, the numbers are similar, but their styles are very different. But Lamar has become a better, quarterback than he was 4 years ago when they got upset in the first round.
Yeah.
And but I still think that like he has not. It's actually, I like the fact that the Chiefs and Ravens have not played this year. Like it's a nice quirk of the schedule because
it
adds to the aura of mystery here. I think that we don't know what's going to happen.
Yes.
And, if the Chiefs can keep this game reasonably close, going into the half, I just, the second half adjustments that we're going to see from Spags, my hope is, if there's a pathway to winning here, it's that he comes up with something that Lamar is not expecting and stymies them in the second half. But on the other side, of course, Mike Macdonald is probably the hottest coordinator, offensive or defensive, in the sport.
And Mahomes hasn't seen him.
And Mahomes hasn't seen him, but he hasn't seen Mahomes.
That's true.
Right?
And it's so fascinating because then on the offensive side of the ball, I mean, Spags has really dominated Lamar, but Lamar has a new offense. He's not under Greg Roman anymore. They have Todd Monken calling plays now. And so really all of the matchups here are fresh. They're new. And I feel like on some level, no disrespect to Mike Macdonald and Todd Monken and John. Damn it, this is going to be so confusing.
The
Both of them back.
Johnsons.
Which no,
Oh,
the
Harbaughs. The
Harbaughs.
Harbaughs.
Oh, right.
I know it should not be difficult for me, but
John
in any
is
case,
there. Jim is the
Yes.
Charger. Yeah.
John Harbaugh. No disrespect to any of those coaches, they're all very good, and what they've accomplished this year is incredible. But in a game where you have fresh coaching matchups all the way around, and really on both sides of the ball, players interacting against coordinators that they have not faced before, you got to feel like that favors the Chiefs and Andy Reid and Steve Spagnuolo and Patrick Mahomes.
I certainly want to believe that. Yes, and again, we know that even in the playoffs against playoff defenses, against for obviously hot defensive coordinators. I mean, let's not forget what the Eagles, that they'd reinvented defense last year.
Yeah,
and Patrick put up 38 against them. Right, so like we know. This is the thing that if you're not a Chiefs fan and you just think, okay, Patrick Mahomes is the best quarterback of the sport, you don't fully appreciate is that he is at his peak. He's not just like the greatest player in the NFL today. He might be the greatest NFL player of all time, and he's up there with the greatest performers in any team sport in American history.
Yep.
I mean, I was comparing him in the Ringer to Michael Jordan 3 years ago. And I think that holds up because in the playoffs against the hardest competition, he's never been overwhelmed. And he usually, overwhelms the opponents who, by definition are the best in the sport and, have reason to think that, like we just said, well, Patrick Mahomes has never faced us. Yes, you have not faced him.
right.
There's
Right.
what was the movie? There's a famous line where
You're thinking of Watchmen, and you're thinking of
that's it. Yes, it's the
of
Watchmen
Rorschach when he's in the prison and he says, "I'm not locked in here with you. You're locked in
locked
here
in
with
with
me."
me. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yep,
You're
nailed it.
you know
Austin's
you're
a huge Watchmen guy.
Yes, I am.
your stuff.
As soon as you
it's so famous. I hear
started to
about
go there, I was
Watchmen.
like,
I know
boom,
that
got
quote,
it.
and that's what it is. Patrick Mahomes. He's not in there with you. You are in the arena with him. He is the one who knocks.
He is.
He's always been the one who knocks, but I mean, this game yes, it's the hardest, maybe the hardest challenge he's had to face yet. But you know what? It is absolutely the hardest challenge that Mike Macdonald has had to face.
Yes.
And it would do an incredible amount for his legacy. I mean, on some level, you start to worry he's going to be, like Alexander in Die Hard, who wept because there were no more worlds to conquer. Like you worry that Patrick Mahomes is going to run out of, of hills to conquer, run out of ways to elevate his legacy more than it already is. Right? That's so hard to do. This game, though, I really think is a game that could elevate his already titanic legacy.
Isn't that
if
crazy?
He goes out there and puts up 30 or 35 against this Ravens defense, shut it down, boys. You should never pick against this man again for as long as he is
if he beats the fifth best team in the DVOA era, waiting on the other side, assuming they get past the Lions, is the ninth best team of the DVOA era, the 2023 49ers. So if he rolls through the Ravens and 49ers, I don't think there's anything like that ever in the history of the sport. I mean,
it would certainly rank up there to go, Dolphins, Bills, Ravens, Niners would have to rank among the most difficult. But just the fact that you're playing 4 games instead of 3, right? But like,
right.
It would definitely involve a lot of really smart stat guys running a lot of numbers to see is this the most impressive playoff juggernaut that you've come out at the top of.
Sure.
In
you probably could use DVOA pretty easily on that, right? Like, I mean, that's a pretty
well. When you're jumping by DVOA, it's going to be a blowout. I mean, you've got 2 of the 10 best in the same postseason.
Sure,
that's unheard of.
Before we get you out of here, I want to ask you real quick about Lamar and how you kind of look at he's had kind of an very interesting path so far. He, of course, won the unanimous MVP in 19. He struggled in the playoffs. He's back to kind of being this world beater. He's going to win his second MVP. Now, after his second playoff win last week, he has a 2-3 playoff record. Legacy-wise, is the pressure on Lamar to go up against this unbeatable Titan that is Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs and beat them, or do you think that the Chiefs, if they are legacy watching, feel like we could birth a legacy here if we let this guy beat us and go win a Super Bowl? It's up to us to keep him down a notch and vault ourselves over the top. Like, just, where do you see kind of Lamar in his place right now among
I
the,
mean,
the greats?
I think this game has to mean more for Lamar, because if he loses, then it goes. I mean, he's in the Josh Allen bucket if the guy is
Yeah.
just not good enough to even get to the Super Bowl, let alone win it. He said he's 2-3 in the playoffs. If he loses 2-4,
Yeah.
like you can't claim to be anywhere near Mount Rushmore if you're 2-4 in the playoffs. If he wins, well, I mean, Joe Burrow won. Right. First off, he has to go out and beat the Niners, which is not, or the Lions. But if they play the Niners, it's not a gimme. They did it. It's probably the most impressive game any team has played this season, where they beat them in the regular season.
Right. Gotta do it again, though.
Exactly. They got to do it again. He may, if he does, if he doesn't, then it's all for the question is still there. I mean, the sport is brutal in that way. People's perceptions are brutal. Either you win it all or you don't. But if he does, guess what? Patrick still has two. I think you would have to do it multiple times. Like this is their first meeting, so yes, he would be only the second quarterback in the NFL after Tom Brady to have a winning record against Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs.
Sure.
So yes, there's that, but one game does not, is not a trend. Two, if he did it, if Lamar beats Mahomes in this game, then the next time they meet, if they meet again next year, then I think you were talking about a big deal. I mean, just like the second game against the Bengals was, I think, much more on the line than the first.
It was.
The first we had to prove was a fluke, and if we had lost that game, Bengals fans are insufferable anyway. But like, it's another level. So, but I think for now, no, this game is about Lamar. He's got home field, he's got everything lined up. They got the number 1 seed. He had the week of rest. He has, home field advantage, and his team is pretty much at full strength. He's obviously got this incredible defense behind him too. I will say, of course, the Ravens has incredible defense. They gave up, I think, 14 points less, like less than 1 point per game less than the Chiefs. And if you take out, points scored on, the offense giving up, fumbles for touchdowns and things, I might even be closer. Like the Chiefs defense, I think, is still underrated, certainly in the context of this matchup. Everyone's talking about the all-world defense and this hot coordinator. Well, we have a defense 99% as good, with a coordinator who's not hot new, but has proven in the playoffs that he can come up with ways to stymie even the best offenses that literally ever existed. So
the greatest offense of all time in NFL history.
Yeah. So I was looking forward to last week's game, but oh my God, this game. I mean, I was hoping we'd play the Texans at home. That'd be great. I wanted the Arrowhead Invitational, of course.
Sure. Round 6. Yeah.
But this game, this is, we talk about the most anticipated games, Chiefs, that played in this whole time. Obviously the first Super Bowl, I guess, I mean, I think that the second Super Bowl, but really the Bengals game, like it's short of the Super Bowl. The Bengals game is clear. The second Bengals game was clearly the most anticipated. And I think it would still be number 1 because we only won 1 Super Bowl at that point. We had obviously lost to them. And we hated them. I mean, we had lost to them before. But this one, I mean, obviously, the first, the one against the Patriots, it was incredible. We were hosting an AFC Championship game, like our first AFC Championship game, but it was so new. It was so new. There was a little bit of that, right? Like we just like whatever happens. Oh my God, this guy's for real. We have Patrick Mahomes. This is, it was the way it ended that made us like even more angry. But then we come back to next year and finish it. And if we had played the Ravens that year, it really was 14-15 Royal style. But the next year, if we had played the Ravens, who were the number 1 seed, I think it would have been more anticipated. Playing the Titans, it was almost like, my God, the only anticipation was if we blow this.
Yes.
We got this gift. We're playing the Titans at home. If we blow this because Derek freaking Henry, then like we have no one to blame but ourselves, and it'll be a huge missed opportunity. So I don't feel like that was as anticipated. And then you win one, then the Bills AFC Championship again. It's an AFC Championship. It's important, but I don't feel like there was that much pressure on the game. And then honestly, we may have taken our eye off the ball with the Bengals the first time.
Right.
Clearly the team did at halftime. But then last year,
the lead, looking forward a little bit, that makes total sense. Yeah.
And then last year, but the last year was the most anticipated. I would put the second behind that because the Ravens team are just on paper, they are just better. Like you said, it's one of the best teams on paper in NFL history. But this is also, you're 2 games away from winning that third title, and 3 is a dynasty, and it's over. Like
Yes.
well, hopefully when we talk next week, it's all going to be about dynasty status, and we're 1 game away.
Right.
But you got to win. You're still 2 games away right now. So let's let's just focus on this game. Hopefully we'll have some guys healthy. We'll see if Joe Tooney's out there. Oh, I meant to say I had another good feeling about the game the morning of. I was on the slopes in Vail, and again I had my Patrick Mahomes jersey on, and a ski instructor just kind of called out, "Hey, you're ready for the game or whatever." It's kind of obvious I'm rooting for the Chiefs. But then he comes over and he's like, "Oh yeah," he's like, I have a buddy. His son was a lineman at Illinois, and he got a call from Andy Reid in the middle of the draft. And it's like Andy's like, "You want to block for Patrick Mahomes?" And I look at him like, "Wait, is your buddy's son Nick Allegretti?"
Yeah.
Wow.
And he's like, "Yeah, Nick."
What?
I'm like, okay. I'm like, that was a pretty good sign. This of all things,
Yes.
the random
That's crazy.
because he's a Chicago kid. I had a friend who texted me the day of the draft and was like, "Who's Nick Allegretti?" I'm like, "The Chiefs just drafted him in the 5th round." He's like, "Yeah, his whole family's at this restaurant here and celebrating." So of course, I didn't expect Nick Allegretti to actually have to play a quarter of the snaps because Joe Tooney
played well.
But still, it was a good sign, and he played well. He had a couple of really good plays. But obviously, we need Joe Tooney. Willie Gay looks like he'll probably play. That I think is the most
practiced in full, and he said, "I'm playing on Sunday on."
And that's the one, because man, we need. We not having him to spy on Allen was a problem, and
yes, it was.
We need a spy for Lamar. So, but if he's able to play, the team is in relatively good health. And again, Patrick Mahomes has 2 working legs this year, so like, sky's the limit.
Good luck.
But man, this game is going to be this is going to be a fun one, I think.
Well, Rany, as always, we super appreciate your time. Episode 10 was just as good as the last 9. Can't wait to talk to you next week, hopefully in celebration, or even at this point, putting to bed the 2023 Chiefs is not going to be as rough of a situation as I thought we were going to face even a couple weeks ago. I mean, they've gone out, they turned the playoffs
on Christmas Day.
On Christmas Day, I didn't even think I'd ever do this podcast again, honestly. So it's been a fun ride. We appreciate it, and we will talk to you next week.
Looking forward to it.